When we get to know one another, get to know each other's story, we're not picking these easy attributes to define the relationship. That's my child, period. Not my child who has whatever. That's my neighbor, period. Not the neighbor who has that color skin.
Welcome to Mamas in Spirit, a place for you to know you matter, draw close to God, and live your calling. I'm Lindy Wynn, and it's a blessing to be with you. Welcome everyone to this gathering of Mamas in Spirit. And sometimes I feel like with Mamas in Spirit, we are going to look at and explore matters that are really sensitive matters and matters that are deeply of the heart and so important for us to attend to and to attend to in our own hearts, our own lives, our personal relationships with God, as well as with one another. And a wonderful man of faith who was in season 1 of Mamas in Spirit, Paul Mitchell, recommended to me to talk to Cheryl Farrell. And we are going to be exploring race today and stories about race, but really of humanity and of the human heart and of God, and of the world that God dreams for us and wants for us. And Cheryl and I had the blessing of getting together over Zoom a couple weeks ago, and we spent an hour and a half together, and it was an instant connection of the heart. And I feel insanely blessed by Mamas in Spirit because of relationships and relationships like this when God brings us together. So let us take a moment to center ourselves and to open in prayer in the Holy Spirit, like we're called to begin everything in our lives, every day, every encounter, every relationship, and every moment. Dearest Lord, in Psalm 82:3, you say, defend the weak and the fatherless, uphold the cause of the poor and oppressed. Lord, you call us to advocate and to share our stories openly and vulnerably, honestly and authentically, so we can really understand one another's experiences and we can really dig deep and get down to the heart of the matter in life to sift through and discern where you are and where you're calling each one of us. And Lord, I just want to pray and lift up anyone in our world who is oppressed, anyone who is held down by evil and of things and dynamics and of people who are not of you and are not choosing you, Lord. And Lord, I want to pray for courage and healing and bravery and goodness and change in your Holy Spirit, Lord, because you show no partiality. Every human life is sacred and to be revered, Lord, because every human life is created by you. So today, during this conversation and this time together, Lord, may we come to know you more fully by coming to know Cheryl, your precious creation, more fully. In your name we pray. Amen. Cheryl, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I am just delighted by the spiritual context for this discussion, and I send my love back to you. It was wonderful speaking with you. Earlier, I was hoping that we didn't run out of things to talk about, so maybe we'll repeat ourselves a little bit, but I'm delighted to be here.
I have a feeling we could talk for days, Cheryl.
Okay.
So, Cheryl, can you just start by telling us a little bit about you and your story and what brings you here today?
Thank you for that. Professionally, I am a corporate communications specialist, a consultant, and then I'm also a performance storyteller. And what that means is that I use the storytelling concept to share messages that sometimes traditional communications fall short on. So lectures or emails and things like that have a message, but told in the form of a story, it is more lasting. You know, some of the earliest storytelling examples were parables in the Bible. Whether you are a Christian or not, you know about the fishes and loaves and the Good Samaritan, building your house on stone. And so that, I just think, is a powerful vehicle to get our lessons and messages out. So I do that by day. I have 2 adult children. They're just They're my hearts. One is a law school graduate from Notre Dame. Another is a theater graduate from NYU. I've been married for 35 years. Same man, continuous years. I always like to qualify that. And I have, from a very early age, understood that I had a calling, and I've often assigned that to either my business card or my LinkedIn profile. But as I've grown spiritually and chronologically, I've come to see that calling uses all these attributes of my profession for a greater purpose.
Yes, and the most important of advocacies and hearts of the matter. And that's what we are here for today. And Cheryl has been published before, and I had the blessing and the gift of reading an article that you had written, which was really a story. And it was a story that touched on my heart because I have come to realize in these last months that there are people in my life who I care for deeply or who have been part of my journey who are Black and who I did not know some of the things that they were carrying with them and some of their experiences and some of the realities that they face every day in their lives that are heartbreaking. And so I would love for you to share your story with us to begin.
That would be great. I'm happy to do that. This is an article that was originally submitted, and actually it was performed, a story was performed in 2018 under the NPR program Unheard LA. It's out of the KPCC station in Pasadena. And the original story prompt was, tell us about your community, however you define that. And I found that freeing. I didn't have to look at geography or area code or zip code as a way of defining community. And so I picked the community of the Sisterhood of Black Women Over 50. And that community was the star of that story in 2018. Shortly after the race protest George Floyd here in 2020, the station came back to different storytellers who had race as some part of their original story and asked to repurpose it. And so in doing so, a few months ago, we revisited this story, and it was interesting that race became the star and the community became the backdrop. And what it tells me is that matters of race are timeless. We just look at them differently through a different lens. So I'd like to share that story with you, and we can chat about it. And it's entitled, And They Still Crossed the Street. I was born and raised in South Los Angeles, but I have always lived where there are very few African Americans. I've been in Thousand Oaks for more than a decade, and before that, I had homes in Glendale and also in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, known for its Amish community. The pattern of living where I rarely see Black people is unintentional on my part. For reasons of work mainly, my family has lived where we are often strangers or strange looking to others in our hometown. I've adapted to being the odd man out with a routine for leaving the house. I grab my keys, cell phone, and water bottle, and I put on the face of normalcy. That face expects suspicious looks from sales clerks as I enter a shoe store where I've been a rewards member for 13 years. The face ignores subversive comments from white coworkers when I get a little too much attention for doing my job well. The face shields my children from a swastika flag hung on a neighbor's balcony in plain view of our backyard. Sadly, the face becomes an overused mask, providing little protection from demoralizing assaults to human dignity. And so I have found a different type of community for support. It's a community defined by race, gender, and age. I live in the Sisterhood of Black Women Over 50. We are experts at code switching to present a non-threatening countenance to people who don't know us. Now, one personal example of code switching comes from when I lived in Glendale in the mid-1990s. We had a lovely Spanish-style home near the foothills, and I so enjoyed the tree-lined streets and well-manicured lawns. I made a habit of jogging in the area on Saturday mornings. For most runs, I threw on sweatpants, a t-shirt, and a baseball cap. But I soon realized the sight of a Black person running towards folk made them change route, as if they had a primal urge to do so. I wondered if it had something to do with the side of the street I was on. So I experimented. I started my run on the opposite side of the street. Still, it happened. I tried dressing up for my runs. I bought coordinating jogging outfits. I ran without a cap. I even put on makeup for a smoother complexion and tiny earrings to signal to people that I was a woman, maybe less of a threat. Still, they crossed the street. One time a woman pulled her Mercedes to a corner mailbox on my side of the street, and she exited the car. Then, as she saw me approaching, she turned around and activated her car lock. Boop, boop. The loud chirp was a signal that I made her uncomfortable. I was tempted to wear a sandwich board sign during my jogs that read, "I'm no threat, have large mortgage here, and I'm current on my payments." My experiment continued. I decided to walk instead of run. In addition, I invited a white female friend to join me. I didn't let her in on my undercover strategy. To my surprise, not one person crossed the street. Many of the passers-by greeted us, "Good morning, nice day for a walk." And as I recall, I even got close enough to compliment one woman's beautiful baby in a stroller. Now, when I clued my walking partner in on the experiment, her take was, "Oh, you're just being hypersensitive. I can't believe it makes a difference if you're white or Black to exercise." When I told the story to a sister, her response was, "That's code for girl, you got that right." Within the sisterhood, there's no need to explain the triple whammy of race, gender, and age as a load we carry. That jogging experience was more than 25 years ago. These days, the behavior of people crossing the street as I approach is occurring for different reasons. I walk with my face covered due to COVID-19, and ironically, fear-based behavior keeps me safe from the virus. The protests of recent months expose what I have quietly experienced for decades. I get no satisfaction in the proverbial "I told you so." I wasn't imagining it, I wasn't paranoid, and I wasn't an alarmist. Racism is real. My heart sank when I learned about Ahmaud Arbery, the Black jogger who was killed this year while on his exercise route. Jogging while Black, exercising while Black, being while Black, videotaped while Black. I often think of Ahmaud's mother and send prayers up for her comfort. The sisterhood represents a legacy of women who thrive in the face of negative racial stereotypes. We have a collective resolve that influences political outcomes, affects social change, and just as important, we manage households. We have been accomplished members, some of whom are known by their first name only. I call them the great O's. There's Oprah, Viola, Michelle, Obama. Pioneers include Anita Hill, whose 1991 congressional testimony first brought to light sexual harassment in the workplace. And there are millions of my community members who live without celebrity. We are business owners, philanthropists, scientists, and hold just about any profession you can name. And we are actors, not always by profession, but by nature, by necessity. We are unsung heroes as nurturers from way back. Our community was counted in U.S. labor statistics long before Blacks and women could even vote. Why? because our mothers' mothers' mothers were nannies to other people's children. Yet we carry the load as role models for our sons and daughters. We use hope as a noun, that deep in your bones belief that things will be all right. It allows us to show grace to those who fear the unfamiliar, even in a richly diverse Los Angeles.
Cheryl, thank you for your profoundly meaningful and moving words and for sharing your story. And your story touches my heart in so many ways and on so many levels. And like I had shared with you earlier, it reminded me of a post that someone I knew from growing up wrote, who is Black, and it happened after George Floyd was killed. And what he shared was surprising to me because I shared with you, Cheryl, that I grew up in a diverse high school and many, many years ago. And so it was very diverse for its time as well. And I had friends of all different races and quite frankly, didn't think much of it, just like children. And I shared with you that a man and his daughter, who I'm going to honor their privacy, so I'm not going to share their names, but who are Black, lived with my family when I was a child. And I thought nothing of it because I was a child and had the heart of a child and a very pure heart of a child. But much like your story, there's two things that strike me. One is the experience of the soul that here you talk about on a surface level, putting on these masks time and time again, going out time and time again, and feeling like you need to hide or cover or whatever else because of different dynamics that you have no control over, that you're exposed to. And he shared about that as well. And I want to read just a little bit of this because I want to tie these two stories together because I want people to know this is a common experience. This isn't just your experience, Cheryl. I think you are the voice of many. And he talked about it is so difficult to describe what it's like knowing that your presence makes others uncomfortable and in some cases fearful just walking down the street. And the color of your skin can cost you your life. In 2020, that's no way to live. But sadly, every single one of my Black friends know exactly what I'm talking about and experience these emotions either consciously or subconsciously every single day. And that's what your story communicates to me as this is part of your everyday lived experience. And then I want to get to later, the second thing you talked about is hope, because he talks about that later. He talks about, but I'm going to focus on what I can control, how to raise my kids, the compassion I show for others, being an ally for disenfranchised groups, working to create positive outcomes for those with a passion for making a difference, etc. So there's two layers to this. First is this experience and reality that you have every day.
Yes. The way I make peace with it, or at least cope with it, is understanding that it's a primal human phenomenon. And whether you believe in creation or not, there's this primal thing about wondering, is that dinosaur going to eat us? I've got to do this friend or foe, fight or flight decision instantaneously. I don't have the luxury of finding out that the dinosaur, did the bear eat already, and so maybe it won't eat me today. And we transfer that in modern times by looking at images that we don't have a lot of information about. You see a Black kid in a hoodie, instantaneously, we have to decide if we're going to cross the street. And it doesn't matter if it's an old Black woman in a hoodie. It's just a Black face in a hoodie. And that very primal, instantaneous decision is made for their own survival. It's misplaced, but I understand where it's coming from. And it's why I believe so much in storytelling, because without knowing the information about a person's background, we will fill it in with whatever data, whatever source it's come from some stereotypes in movies, bigotry that's been passed on from generations, we fill in that story immediately and make a decision. But what if you saw someone coming towards you, and in addition to seeing their face color, you go, oh, that's Cheryl. That's Cheryl who has kids that are my kids' age. That's Cheryl who called me when I was sick and asked if she could help in some way. All that data floods in, no fear. You go up, hey, how you doing? Good to see you, Cheryl. And that's what happened in this experiment with this jogging partner, walking partner. Because what I'm guessing is the people who approached us saw a white person with me and figured, well, if they're not afraid, we shouldn't be afraid. It doesn't excuse the behavior, but it keeps Black people from being in a fetal position. Because if you know every day you go out, you're having to prove that you are safe, that could be debilitating.
Yes. This is hard to hear for such an important reason. And really, this is at the heart of not just Mamas in Spirit, but of God and faith.
Yes.
You used the word dignity a long time ago in this podcast. And every single human life is of profound value. And you are so incredibly mature and empathetic and well-processed and compassionate and understanding, and God bless you.
Well, thank you. It comes, though, at a price. It comes at a price. And I didn't know how deep my hurt was until the events in these last few months. It wasn't just George Floyd. It was Ahmaud Arbery. It's all the others. The difference is these were caught on camera. And they were caught when people were stuck at home. And they saw this news loop over and over again. Early on, when I would make social media posts about George Floyd, there were a number of well-meaning white women that would reply, it'll get better. It was just kind of, let's go back to creating the hashtag like we did for the 20 some odd other people that we learned about. This time it was different. And that too is primal, because to know the depth of this rage is frightening. You don't know if there's going to be some mass upending of the world. Is the familiarity of routines, this white privilege, going to be threatened? And I don't use white privilege as white shaming, but there's just this understanding that a lot of people don't have to think about getting out of their car, walking down the street. And so, yeah, I get it. I have processed it, but it can't be put with a nice, tidy little bow that says, oh, I understand. It requires action. It requires a voice. And that's what I find myself called to do. I mentioned earlier about this calling. I felt like, oh, it would be communications, and I would write speeches for executives, and I'd be on television as part of my background, and I would just be a voice. But the calling puts a mission behind the voice. So you use those tools, you use those skills, those talents, your resources in order to affect change in some kind of way. And I never would have imagined that it would be this topic that would be my calling. I can remember talking out loud to God, and I do it frequently, and I don't care if people see my lips moving and there's no phone up. I just talk out loud to God. And many times it's like, Lord, use me. Let me be your vessel. Like, I'm just as brave as I want to be, right? He says, okay, so here's what I need you to do. I need you to talk about something that's going to scare everybody. And it's uncomfortable for me. And I'm like, well, Lord, really? Are you sure you got the right person? And I'm reminded that the price that his son paid was far greater than my being an irritant to people, an inconvenience to people, an annoyance to people. And so I go, oh, never mind, I got this. And I got it knowing that you're going to be with me as I go. Like, he doesn't send you out there and leave you to figure it out. He said, if I've given you this calling, I will equip you with it. And one of the things he equipped me with is old age. I have been lamenting that I'm growing old. I thought of this young sister girl from way back, and I got a birthday coming up. And if I had looked at that age years ago, I said, oh, they are ready to go. They are just old and tired. But it is because I've been around and Black all those times that I can, without apology, without hesitation, call it what it is. And the last point here is that as a communications professional, I know ranting and raving and white shaming and does little to your cause. It shuts people down. So it is being fervent in your topic, but knowing the best way to be persuasive, how to be taken seriously without scaring people. There's a stereotype for Black women, the angry Black woman. I've walked into business meetings, not said a word, and already I'm assigned that label. So that comes with it, but I want to use my powers for good. So if there's some energy about me that makes people stop and listen, then I will flood it with whatever message God has for me to share.
Well, and to me, the energy that comes from you is a spirit of building up and creating relationships and connection and understanding and teaching, educating, raising awareness, advocating. And that is what we're called to. And I feel compelled to both not only affirm your experience in this way, but also because not everyone listening is going to know me or my story or my family's story. So this topic does touch on a tender part in my heart because we are an interracial family and we are an adoptive family. And our children are most of all darker than us. Definitely we're of different races predominantly. And one of my children in particular is a lot darker than me. And over the years, it has changed a lot. And you spoke earlier about actually attending in a deeper way to your own pain and what you carry in your own life. And I told Cheryl the first time we spoke that as soon as we adopted children, there were places in America that we were not moving to because we're an interracial family. We've actually talked about moving before, and that's always at the top of the list. There is no way I'm going to place our family or my children in a situation where they feel alone or isolated or judged or anything else. And racism is real. And I love what you have also said before, Cheryl, and others have said before, is don't let things go. When people even say little things, and one of my little family members said something inappropriate the other day, and I educated him right away. You can never say anything like that again. And let me tell you why. So for us, we live with one another and we see each other all the time. So it's not like I'm noticing my kid's skin color, usually, quite frankly, almost ever. And like my second to oldest has a port wine stain on her cheek. I never see her port wine stain until someone else points it out because it's pretty obvious, but I forget that she has it because all I do is love them. And they're my heart. Like you said, for your kids, they're my heart. But at the same time, there is this reality that we live in. And I've gotten plenty of comments over the years wondering the race of my husband or stares or other things of the sort because it's unfamiliar. It's unfamiliar and we're different. We are different.
Again, that primal fear of something that's unfamiliar is a self-protective mechanism. I just have to find the balance between ignoring it because, that's what people do, and the opposite extreme of railing against everyone that looks at you 2 or 3 times. Point you brought up earlier about the big things. Someone used an expression, little r or capital R for racism. There's no grammar in that. Racism is racism. Whether it's a stare or a swastika flag, it's still an affront to another human being based on whatever their attributes are. It is exhausting. I was going to say it can be exhausting. It is exhausting calling people out all the time because it's a 24/7 lifestyle. But you pick your battles. You decide when you're going to say something and how you're going to say something. And I try to make sure that I have had my protein, that I'm not hungry, because those kind of primal things can take you to a place that you don't want to be. So I leave the house, I have my protein bar, and I'll see what the world has for me today. And so I alluded to an example of being in a shoe store where, I'm so proud that I'm a VIP rewards member, as if that means they care about me. So I walk into the store, it's midday, midweek, in a white affluent area. And I guess Black people are supposed to still be at work because my walking in that store threw the sales clerks. And so they do the greeting. Hi, do you need anything? No, I'm good. So I go over to the section where they're selling boots. And this is pre-COVID, so you could sit on the little stools and try on your boots. And so one of the white female sales clerks comes over and she's tidying the boxes in this aisle where I am. And she asks again, do you need any help? No, I'm good, thank you. And she stays. And so another white female clerk comes up and she's flanking me from the opposite side and she decides to tidy up the boxes. Now, I didn't walk in there thinking I'm going to say something, but in that moment I go, I could let this go or I could say something. So I said something. I said, is it a coincidence that you are both tidying up these boxes and I'm the only Black person in here? Do you think I'm stealing your shoes? And they weren't prepared for it. They didn't have a script for it. I guess in their thought of inventory control, they need to sit and observe me, stand and observe me. But they weren't counting on me saying, what are you guys doing? I said, you're welcome to look inside my big red bag that I bought from your store 6 months ago over on that rack over there. And in another essay I write about this, and I said, they just kind of evaporated like ghosts. Like when you shed light on that dark, it just went away. And so when I went to pay for my shoes, a young white male manager was there with his two sales clerks, and their eyes are just big as saucers. Like, what is this going to be? And I said, I don't know if you heard me speak to your salespeople earlier, but this is how I experienced your behavior. And all the apologies in the world. And, I don't think they're racist. I don't think there's intent to make me feel bad, but without proper training, operating at a very basic level, stereotyping people, that's what came out. So fast forward, I spoke to an executive at the company when I couldn't get satisfaction from customer service on this. And to his credit, he said these discussions about race are ongoing, and he wanted to keep the discussion going. So that's where you show a little grace. Folk don't mean to be mean, but part of this awareness raising is to say, check yourself. When you do this, when you say this, this is how it feels. And it's just as hurtful as the more overt demonstrations of racism.
Yes. And I love how you use the words about shedding light on the darkness, because that's our call. That's our call by God, is to shed light. And so, Cheryl, moving forward, what would be your greatest hope for listeners?
That there is this awakening without any more bloodshed. Why do people have to die on camera for us to go, oh, that's what that chapter in the Bible meant? That's my hope. Because if we're not better for all these tragic events, that means those lives were in vain, were lost in vain. I often hear, like, what can we do? How can we help? But I think, and I've said this in other presentations, this idea of make a Black friend, a real one, not just a pretend one on social media. And friend is the operative word. Have conversations with them. And it's not about race. Have conversations about gardening. Have conversations about food. And in the course of having real friendships, you'll hear what's going on in the other person's life. A white woman that I do walk with now posted on her Facebook page after this article was published. She says, I heard Cheryl talk about this, and I always felt she was too sensitive. And now I know that's not the case. And what was really compelling at the end of her post, she goes, I'm surprised that Cheryl still calls me her friend. And so I believe in having real friendships of all colors. And another thing is, be careful how you reference your friend. There's a study that says children as early as 4 years old pick up on racial cues. So if you're saying out loud, oh, I'm going to call my Black friend Cheryl, or if you're in the grocery store and you make some kind of comment, kids are picking up on that. You don't qualify your friends by how they look. And then to your point about your kids, my kids' godparents are white. And I don't call them my kids' white godparents. That's just the family. And that's what happens. I'm going to circle back to the storytelling. When we get to know one another, get to know each other's story, we're not picking these easy attributes to define the relationship. That's my child, period. Not my child who has whatever. That's my neighbor, period. Not the neighbor who has that color skin. So it's biblical. Love thy neighbor, and translate that into what that means with our social media, with all the things that are going in the media. Love one another.
Yes, love one another. And one of the things that I've been trying to be more mindful about, and I think this really came from all of these podcast interviews, is speaking of people like this: a woman who is, a man who is, a child who is, whatever kind of explanation is after that, that is applicable to the conversation, is to say a man or a woman. And I think that that is so important, because the Bible says that God shows no partiality, but we as humans, we're human, and we do have a propensity towards sin and division, and we show partiality in so many ways. And I know that during this conversation, there's been a number of examples that have to do with someone who is Black or someone who is white. I don't know how you feel, Cheryl, but I feel like there's discrimination among every race. And there's other issues as well. And that comes from my lifetime of experience, where we can be pretty shallow as human beings, and we can be unaware, myself included. I spoke of that earlier in this podcast, just unaware of someone else's reality and story. And this is what Mamas in Spirit is about. It's about sharing our stories as human beings, as people, as creations of God, as women, and to be deeply connected in that, because faith is faith, grief is grief, love is love, loss is loss, trial is trial. We all have these human experiences in different ways, and we add these other layers to them that are just unnecessary.
I totally agree. Again, as this communications professional, I know that qualifying certain things to give context is important. If it's relevant that the person is white in your sentence, then bring it up, because it gives more information. But if we're throwing it in with some kind of, even if it's benign, aside, it's an affront. It's an unnecessary adjective. And the other thing is, and this is biblical, we are given a name for a reason. They didn't call, that guy that had the ark with the amp, his name was Noah. Call me by my name. That's a tagline for a lot of these, for all the people who have died through police brutality. Call them by their names. And if we adopt that as the way we regard each other, it'll apply when we're not talking about brutal death or assaults. They give you a name for a reason. They don't say the third pink baby in the incubator down the hall when you're first born. That's Mary. That's John. They're given a name immediately for a reason. So let's honor that, what that means.
Yes, I love that. Thank you, Cheryl. I really love that. And it's such an important message. And so, Cheryl, one of the significant things of many that I'm hearing from you is for us to each be deeply aware of our own thought patterns and the way we each function. That's what we have control over.
Yes.
And become more deeply aware and pray and grow,
Yes.
learn, get educated, pray to grow in understanding and compassion to every human person's story and heart and value.
Yes. It costs us nothing to do that. It doesn't cost us time. Just take a beat. Even as a bystander to things that you see, you have a voice in that. Even if you're not the one perpetuating the assault or the crime, or if you see something, it's just as much your responsibility to say something, to do something, to speak up, to be a champion for the disenfranchised.
Yes. And I love how you say that you choose your battles, because that means you are choosing battles and that you're not staying silent, because God does guide us and God will guide us. My oldest child has a severe disability, and many times his behaviors have gotten many, many stares over the years, to say the least.
Mm-hmm.
But there was something about this one incident once at Sprouts where I wasn't watching him for a minute, and he was like 18 years old, but I wasn't watching him for a minute, and it was near St. Patrick's Day, and they had out Irish soda bread for samples. Well, in true fashion, he wanted the biggest piece. So what did he do? He took his little hands and he dug in there and he found the biggest piece. And some woman let him and all of us know that that was not okay, because at face value and at surface value, he's very handsome. He doesn't have any physical disability that you'd be able to tell that there's also a developmental or an intellectual piece.
Yeah.
And she was on the way out the store because the samples were right out the front and we were entering. And I actually followed her out, and I didn't yell at her. I didn't do anything like that. I said, I just want you to know, I'm so sorry. I wasn't watching him. I want you to know that he has a disability. He has special needs. Mm-hmm. And she was so sweet. She turned around and she's like, well, now don't I feel like the idiot or something like that? And I was like, no, it's okay. Like, I get it. But I felt so compelled to tell her, by God, like, I need to go tell that woman that Henry, my son Henry, my beloved son, has a significant disability. And that's why he was digging his hands through the Irish soda bread.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So, this human thing isn't just about lines of race. It's how we're all different. And just to be compassionate with those differences, but just to be compassionate.
Yes. And you said it doesn't cost us anything to change. What I would say is that is where the gain is. That is where the gift is. That's where God's richness and wealth is. Because Cheryl, if I wasn't looking for someone to do this podcast with and have this deeply meaningful conversation, I would never have encountered you. And you are a treasure. And this is the time of COVID. I am trying to help my second child, who also has a disability, who did not end up going off to a highly supportive college program. So I'm her support. And I'm also trying to help my little kindergartner who's home all the time, which you can imagine that's a high level of support. And so how am I going to get Mamas in Spirit done during all this, right? But I sat with you last week or 2 weeks ago for an hour and a half, and it is so confirming. It is so confirming because you are a gift and a treasure. And I want to thank you for being you and the way that you communicate and reach out and your bravery. You are a beautiful example of a woman with a heart for God. And I thank you for that.
I thank you, but I think you're putting the mirror up because you're talking about yourself. You are the gift. I felt an immediate connection. There's not very many platforms where you can have God as the context for this work. And you have a beautiful, rich platform to do that. And thank you for letting me be a part of it. I'm I am better for this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, as am I. And would you like to close us in prayer?
I would. I was anticipating this opportunity, and I wanted to pull the prayer from today's daily gospel reflection. It's from Faith ND from the University of Notre Dame. It's where my son attended, and I thought today's prayer would be appropriate. Dear Heavenly Father, you have given us all that is good. You constantly call us to put out into the deep in service to you and to one another. Give us the courage to listen to your commands and to be fearless in our baptismal call to holiness. Help us to find ways to serve rather than be served, even if those ways may be small or unseen by others. May we be faithful in our vocations to do your will rather than our own, and make you known, loved, and served. Amen.
Amen. Thank you for that beautiful prayer and that reminder to all of us to be courageous and brave and reflect God in the small things as we walk through each simple day of our lives. Most of the time, we're not doing things like podcasts or other things of the sort. And those are the most critical and important and meaningful opportunities for us to build one another up, for us to revere one another as God's holy creations, and for us to promote God-centered change. So thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Please take a moment to subscribe, like, and share Mamas in Spirit with others, and especially this meaningful podcast during this time. I know you can reach out to me at any time over social media. You can follow Mamas in Spirit on Instagram or Facebook, or email me at mamasinspirit@gmail.com. This is Lindy Wynn with Mamas in Spirit. May God bless you and yours always.